Welcome to Spill the Tea. Today we're speaking to Krysten Lindsay Hagar, who is a sweet romance author. Welcome to Spill the Tea, and today we're talking to Krysten, and she is the author of Stars in the City. And it looks like I read the little blurb, so I have kind of a hint on it, but it sounds like it's very much like you've got the soap opera in the background. She's an actress. How did you come up with the idea to make your main character in that sort of venue?
Well, I decided that I was going to make all my books in the same universe, basically. So years ago, when I put out Next Door to a Star, Competing with a Star, which is a little bit younger than Stars in the City, I had the girls obsessed with this soap opera called Charmed Lives, and they were really interested in this actress, Valeria Joseph. And at the time when I was writing that, I remember thinking I'd love to write a Valeria book, but it didn't fit with that series because those girls were a little bit younger. They were in high school, but they were at the beginning part. Valeria's older. So always in the back of my mind, I wanted to write Valeria's story because I drop a little bit about what's going on in her personal life because those girls are reading gossip blogs and all the
As
social media,
teenagers are wont to do.
or adults in my case. um, so I always thought, oh, that'd be so interesting. And then with Stars in the City is a spinoff of my Cecily Taylor series. In the third book in the Cecily Taylor series, Cecily joins Charmed Alive. So it kind of brought the Star series and then the Cecily Taylor series together. And when I was finishing that book up, I thought, oh man, Valeria's in this book. This would be my shot. So I decided to write a spin-off series, which won't just be Valeria. It's going to be all these girls, different people, and it's going to be standalones, but that are interconnected. And so I thought, okay, I can write Valeria's story, bring all that in there, and make the soap opera world. Because I grew up obsessed with soap operas, the whole fantasy thing. So I was just so excited to write that. And it became my happy place, that story, working on it. My first time writing second chance romance, and I loved it.
So this is a second chance romance. Is it like a sweet romance? Is it just a contemporary romance? What kind of category does it fall into?
Definitely sweet romance, because I started out writing a middle school series and then I moved into YA. So I have a lot of preteen readers and a lot of preteens who like to read up in the age levels. So the
Mhm.
parents are buying the YA, but they want to make sure it's got that PG rating. So my original publisher was called Clean Reads. So I still follow all those guidelines, even as Stars in the City, some of the reviewers are saying is in the YA/new adult category because they're having more experiences where they're out in the world on their own because they're working actresses.
Yeah.
So it's not just, like going to school. So yeah, I definitely keep it clean for those, younger readers and things like that, so that they can enjoy it too. And then that way it's not confusing when you go and look, and I didn't have to worry about pen names or, branching off into things like that. So it's definitely a sweet romance. And like I said, writing second chance romance, it's her ex that she went to high school with. He's in college now, a freshman. He's a big basketball player. There's a championship game coming up, and they run into each other on the streets of New York because she didn't know he changed colleges, and now he's basically in the same city as her. So,
So they're back in proximity to one another and, can explore things.
yes, yes. So that was a lot of fun.
So what's your favorite scene in the book?
My favorite scene in the book, well, I have a couple, but one in particular is I needed Davis is his name. Davis James. I needed him to bring his guard down because obviously when he ran into her, there's still feelings. It's very obvious, but you're not just going to forget that hurt. So I had this scene where they do run into each other. They are kind of connecting a little bit, messaging because she writes about like her favorite Valentine gift she ever got, which happened to be from him. And he sees it. And so they start up, you can tell there's still feelings there. And then she finds out that where he is, he tells her he's going, on the road for a game, and there's an earthquake
Oh,
where he is because he's in California. And she messages him, and he's really, really freaked out, very anxious. And so they end up doing a video chat, and his guard is lowered because he's nervous, and she can see that. And she's always known how to bring him down after a big game, anyways, because he gets very amped up and he's very hard on himself and his teammates. And so you see them falling into their old patterns. You see his guard go down. It's very sweet, it's jokey. And that at the end of it, after they hang up, he sends her a cute little meme because he used to tease her about always being cold. And there's just a cute little meme with this little teddy bear with all these blankets on top, like, oh, now I'm warm enough. And there's like a million blankets on top. And so, it's kind of a sweet thing, that more of a boyfriend. And so the wall
Mhm.
has been lowered. And I just loved that. I wrote it twice just for my own sake. And then I decided which one was best. But I really think I wrote it the second time just for myself because it was so cute.
And with this series, like this is a series, you also have a second book I saw, and it's a hockey romance in this one.
Yes, yes. Well, I was, like I said, a journalist, but I actually didn't cover college sports. I covered professional. So bringing it into a college thing is a little different. It is quite a bit different, and especially if you're making it a sweet romance. I won't get into that too much, but there's some challenges with that. But yeah, that's been a fun one to write too, and that will be coming out end of June. I'm excited about that. I was so excited with the cover. I have just a great cover artist, Car Graphics. We've worked together for 10 years now.
Oh, wow.
Years, yeah. And just I love her. And I will each time I will tell her what I picture the characters looking like, because she'll ask. And she'll always give options, and there'll always be one that looks just like what I was picturing, but then there's always one that's just somehow she picks up the essence of it, and she just nails it. So I was so excited to see the cover on this. And there's the third book. I already have the cover for that one, so I'm so excited.
So is this just going to be a three series, or are you thinking more, maybe, depending how things go?
I think it's going to be more. The ideas are like rushing in with all their different friends and ideas. Because I've had ideas for this for a while.
Hmm.
Um, because the next book coming out has been something I've been working on for a while. The only reason I didn't put anything out sooner or anything is because when the younger books were kind of taking off, you kind of like publishers kind of want you to stay in that genre a little bit. They don't
Yeah.
like genre hop. So I did kind of stay with that. And then with Cecily in the City, it aged up naturally because obviously she was getting older and stuff like that. And it just kind of was like, well, now this all fits together, and I didn't have to worry about, like ratings, moving from PGR because it doesn't, it stays. And so it makes it easier. It's much more of an organic move rather than something where, sometimes when people try to like market things that can kind of take the heart out a little bit, this just
Mm.
kind of flowed into each other nicely and stuff. So
Yeah, it's rare to have that happen, but when it does, it's sort of kind of a little magic, especially for the readers who don't want to let characters go.
in authors who can't let characters go. I'm bringing in people that I'd always wanted to write about, like in the Star series, which is one of my first ones that came out. Um, I would talk about Jack Broger, this singer that the girls were obsessed with, and I wanted to write a book where one of the girls got involved, but she was just too young because I kind of made Jack seem older. I never gave an age, but I thought, oh man, it doesn't really work. Okay, and so that's where kind of the Cecily Taylor series came into, where Cecily dates her favorite pop star. They meet. Because she accompanies a friend on a music video audition, and it just happens very naturally. What I love about that is everyone's like, it feels like it could happen. It feels like you could actually meet and start dating your favorite pop star. But of course, things go wrong, and you see what it would really be like, the anxiety, the comparison. Um, and so Jack Broger will be coming into this series. I finally get to write about him. Um, I'll be bringing Andrew Holliday back, and then just a couple people here that you had mentioned in other books, different soap stars, actors, singers, and stuff. The singer Isla King, who is in the Cecily Taylor series, she's going to get her own book. So yeah, there's a lot of ideas churning up in the old noodle and stuff, but it's been so much fun.
And writing about that sort of character circle and kind of keeping it all in the same world, Did you do that on purpose, or was that just kind of something that you stumbled upon?
It was my dream to do that, but because at that time I had two different publishers, I didn't think I'd be able to. It was a dream, but it was a dream I didn't think I would be able to do. And then as things changed and rights and things changed, it was like, oh my gosh, I can do this now. I can have so much fun with this. This is going to be so great because it's fun for me and it's fun for like the Easter eggs that, readers see. But I really think it's basically the most fun for me. I'm just having a blast doing it. So, but yeah, it's been a fun. The only challenge is these characters, all my characters. Oh man, do they have minds of their own?
Oh, yes. Yes, characters
And
do.
and things click for me. I very much am one that will let things, I pray a lot. And I always kind of do that with my books. Like, okay, if there's something I'm supposed to be writing about that I'm not putting in there, show me type thing. And that comes out a lot. There'll be certain things where I'm like, okay, this is gonna happen, and then this, and then this, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, no, 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 no. And then it won't even let me go. It'll be like I'm watching TV and some weird news station that I've never watched before will come out. Like I'm watching a movie or something, and then I like it goes off and like, oh, okay, I didn't know they had news on this channel. And they'll start talking about a story, and I'm like, yeah, that's a little sign that I'm supposed to go this way, or something strange. Like someone sent me a card with a little quote thing in it, and on the back of the
Mhm.
quote, which they hadn't even read, there was something exactly like what I was thinking about. And I'm like, okay, all right. And one day I got four little signs, and I was like, all right, got the message. Apparently, this is the way we're going on it. Because you do have to be careful with writing about something like stars in the city. You have to be honest about the fact that all that glitters is not gold, which
Mhm.
does show up. What wasn't necessarily my intention when I started writing this to show, the other side. I was going to be honest about the things that I saw as a journalist and things like that, but it wasn't really like my intention, but it comes out. It just, you can't ignore certain things. And
Yeah.
I watch and read a lot of biographies, autobiographies, memoirs, and things on singers, actors, producers, directors, things like that. Athletes too, because there's a lot of athletes in these books. So I do a ton of research and stuff, and so you can't ignore the realities as well.
Very true. So you mentioned that you were published initially traditionally. Are you still published traditionally, or are you going the indie path?
Now I'm on the indie path. I had 8 books traditionally, and then the third Cecily book, I decided I was like, hey, I can write a third Cecily book now. I've always wanted to. So that came out last year, and then now it stars in the city. So um, now you have much more creative control, and I can't tell you how much fun that is. That's when everything kind of opened up and stuff like that, and it's been fun. It's been an adventure. It's been like walking on a tightrope without maybe a net underneath,
Mhm.
but it's definitely like the sun coming out and like, oh my gosh, you have all these ideas and you can just run with it and stuff like that. So,
It's a lot freer versus having to conform to a set of rules, so to speak.
well, not just that too, but when you have somebody looking at numbers, I know a lot of people who I see, it's really hard to see this, but it's their dream to get published. And then the reality comes in. And
Mhm.
a lot of writers, well, actually, no writer is prepared for that reality. Nobody can tell you what it's like when you first put your book out. As you know, what you think is going to happen on release day is not necessarily what happens. And now there are more people talking about things like that. And like, after some people have like an after publication letdown type of thing, it's
Mhm.
different. Well, like with anything, like marriage or having kids, whatever it is, it's never exactly how you think until you're there. And it's hard to explain to people. Because I remember being in those writing groups and thinking, oh man, this woman's published and oh my gosh, everything must be perfect. And then the more she talked, I'm like, is she just saying that? So she must be saying that so we all aren't jealous. That's it. Yes. And then now it's like, oh, oh, I get it now. There's just much more pressure,
Hmm.
there's much more stress. And it's almost like you can't, and now I'm giving away too much because Andrew Holiday, the singer, talks about this in the books about how no matter what you do, it's never enough. It's, like constantly feeling like your best, you're just pushing, and it just constantly feels like failing type thing because there is so much pressure. And, it's even, I've seen so many authors talk about like, oh my gosh, like this happened. You're thinking, oh my goodness, it's a dream come true. And then when you talk to them, their publisher wasn't happy with that. That wasn't enough type of thing. So that's, eye-opening too. And even if you aren't hearing that, which some people don't, that wasn't really my experience where I was hearing that, you still feel that way. You're looking at everything differently, and I don't think it's necessarily healthy for anybody in a creative job of any type to be looking at the numbers and analyzing. I know so many authors love that. I went to a conference where they were like, okay, now we're going to show the graph because I know everybody wants to see that. I'm thinking, I am not in the right place because I don't want to see any of that. Because you do start to look at things differently. You start to think, oh, this must be what's working. Oh, I got to do more than that. And see, that to me is the hardest thing. That is, you want to throw writer's block, you might as well pour cold water on me. Because if you start telling me this is what you need to do, it's very hard for me to just let that creativity kind of be funneled a different way because this is what is working. That's very difficult for me.
Yeah, with what the market niche is, what they think the next trend is. And yeah, it interferes with your creative control, so to speak.
100%, you get it, yes. And so with some people though, that's the way they're wired. I'm not.
Mm.
I can do that, but I don't enjoy it. I think you can see it in the work. I think you can see, when, and I think it's great if people can write to mark. I think that's wonderful. I think it's a great talent. I just don't have it. That's not the way I'm wired. I wish I was. I think maybe life would be easier, but that's just not. Anytime I've tried, it's just feels like slogging through mud, and your shoes are getting stuck. Your pants are now splattered on the bottom. It's not pretty. It doesn't work for me.
But I think though too, I mean, the one good thing about it is that there are so many readers in the world with so much different, opinions and appetites of what they enjoy reading, that I think even if you don't write exactly to market, there's still a niche of readers out there. It might be harder to find them, but once
Mhm.
you have them, I feel like they'll be more loyal because they will enjoy your books more because that's what they're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, I read a book actually right before I signed my first contract. And it was talking about, would it be enough if your book only reached a couple people, but it reached the people that really needed that? Would that be
Mhm.
enough? So I go back to my critique group at the time and I'm like quoting this book, I'm telling them all about it. And they looked at me like Pollyanna, like they saw daisies woven in my hair, and that I was like twirling in circles on a mountaintop. And they were like, we're here to get published and make a career out of this. And I felt so like, and you could just see like deflated, sinking down. And I thought, okay, but I thought, you know what? After reading that though, it felt like the right path for me. So I thought I'm going to continue looking at it that way, writing the stories for like the girls who maybe need that. Because I knew growing up, particularly in those preteen years, from like fourth grade, really, if I'm being honest, fourth grade more, fifth, sixth in particular, those were the years where I was just obsessed with reading. I mean, I think it was like almost therapy because now that I look back at it, a lot of the books I were reading, I was getting help with dealing with frenemies and mean
Mm.
girls and stuff like that. Because I was not going to go to my parents and tell them like, oh, so and so, I'm having issues at school with some of these girls, or these cliques and stuff like that. I was because my mother would have marched down there. How humiliating. No, absolutely not. That woman does not know her place to this day. She would have been down there and like, what? You're not letting my child sit at your table? Like, oh, I would have just died. So I would be reading like Paula Danziger because she dealt with a lot of that stuff, like the growing pains of, trying to fit in, or making yourself like music and clothes and things that you don't actually like just to fit in with a group.
Yeah.
I think we've all done things like that. And Paula Danziger was a master at that. I mean, she understood what it meant to be a preteen and a teenager and not quite knowing where your place is and things like that. And so books like that, they were just my lifeline. And I remember thinking, like, I had one of those big pillows that was like a little chair propped up in my bed where I would like read for hours. And I remember thinking, oh, if I could just write something like one of these women, and that moved somebody like me, oh, that would be the dream. And I still have some of those books. And I've moved a lot because of my husband's job. So some of them are not in good condition. But there were just some books that were just, I've read them over and over, and they were just like a lifeline. And so I knew from like an early age that, I wanted to do this.
You wanted to be writing similar books and giving the same happy ever after experience.
Yes, making someone feel less alone, giving them a little bit of like distraction and hope and
Hmm.
possibility, because that's what I needed. I needed to believe that, okay, things aren't great right now. This stupid small town, I just can't wait to leave this town. And then like I think every little kid has that where like you have a bad day at school and it's like, well, I'll show them, you know, they don't appreciate me here type of thing, like all the characters when you were growing up that you were reading about, and that that's just what I wanted to do. And so I hope that I can do that for readers, because that's what I needed 100%.
Hmm. You mentioned that you have a background in journalism. How did that help your writing career?
Well, I think starting out, for one, it gave confidence. um, Two, learning how stories are put together. But for me it was a lot of seeing human nature. You see a different side to people. Interviewing, I can see sooner what a person is really about due to that.
Hmm.
Um, it also, for some reason, and it wasn't anything I was ever taught in class, I can kind of see what's coming sometimes in popular culture. I don't mean like music or things like that, but just attitudes,
Yeah.
things like that. I can kind of foresee things, in which I do remember, especially when I was interning. Um, some of the, because I started out in TV news, and then I was doing print journalism, which I actually liked better. I could kind of see different attitudes. You kind of get to a point where you feel like you've seen certain things before too. So human nature is one thing. You become an expert on things really fast because you're assigned something and you got to learn everything about it real quick, which is sometimes when you watch the news, you'll hear reporters repeating stuff when they ask questions because they learned something and they got that down, and they're going to make sure they're going to go back to it. They know their stuff. So I like learning stuff on the fly, but really for me, the human nature part, and also interviewing people. I didn't just learn how to interview, I learned how people handled things.
Mm.
And there were a couple of people who were known to be difficult personalities, shall we say. Um,
They're out
perhaps,
there. We
perhaps
all
in
get the
this
joy of dealing with those.
Yeah, perhaps in, this the sports realm, sometimes people were, and I learned a lot from how they handled questions. Not maybe particularly mine. I am not saying I was like, I wasn't necessarily throwing softballs, but questions, but sometimes I would see like how they would take a really aggressive question from another reporter and how they'd handle it. And I was like, wow, it was like a master class, really. And
Hmm.
so some of that has really inspired, and I take notes like nobody's business. And so a lot of that goes back, maybe when Andrew Holliday, the pop star, is dealing with something, this will come back. So, and I always say to people too, if they want to write a book, make sure the first thing you don't get a critique or a review on is your baby, because I've seen writers never write again. Make sure if
Yeah.
it's an op-ed in a newspaper, I had a mentor that said that she felt that was the best thing to do, is like an op-ed. I know I didn't do that because I was doing other news things, but make sure you get feedback from strangers on the internet, or where they write letters to the newspaper like back in the day, because you don't want the first time you ever hear criticism of your work to be something you poured your heart and soul on. Sometimes people too, they write about their own experiences, and you do not want to hear something, because every once in a while I have someone saying to me like, oh my gosh, they hate the mother character, that's my mother. Or they hate this relationship and they hate the guy, that's based on my relationship. And I'm like, like, well, it's just one person's opinion. And
Hmm.
advice I got when I was starting out is, if you do get some, bad review, go to your favorite book, the book that you just think there's no problem with. It's just the most perfect book ever. And read the bad reviews. And then it's like, oh,
And
oh
they are
wow.
there.
Yes, yes. And it really does help.
And
Because if somebody can hate your bait, yeah.
I think it really does make you see that there's an audience for you. And, if they're not enjoying your book, they're just not your audience.
That's such a great way to put that. Yes. It's just that, it wasn't their taste. Yeah. And
Hmm.
so there's nothing necessarily that you need to maybe change. I mean, if everyone's saying, something's not working, maybe. Um, but yeah, it's just like, when a new movie comes out, maybe everybody likes it. Maybe you are just like, oh, this is fine, but and then maybe there's another movie that comes out that you've already watched 4 times and you're trying to get all your friends to watch and you're getting mad that they're not watching. And then they watch it and they're like, yeah, no, it was good. It didn't finish it. And you're like, how could you not? It's a masterpiece. So, people's tastes are different. And you kind of try to not take it personally. It's very hard, but I guess in some ways you just kind of have to look at it too as everyone has their own tastes. It's not for everybody. And, there's some people that are just going to absolutely love it. But if you have a book that people love to a certain extent, like an extreme love, you will also have an equal amount of dislike where it's going to hit people raw.
Yeah.
And if you have a book that seems like, well, maybe it's not my taste, but the reviews are, oh, I still appreciate it. You didn't quite go far enough and push far enough because you actually want the extreme. I love you. I love you. I love this book. And ugh, at the same time, you
Yeah.
want that extreme to like really hit. 'Cause that's usually,
Push
kind of
those buttons.
exactly, exactly. But
Yeah.
that's a little hard to do because once you have once you have your first published book out where people are giving feedback, you no longer have that complete creative freedom because you have a little bit of a critic on your shoulder saying, they didn't like that last time. Why are you doing that? I
That's
have a
true.
name for mine.
What's your name for yours?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. She has a little bit of a sternness to her. Yeah. But I've now learned that Elizabeth isn't just harping on me because she thinks I'm worthless. It's because she's trying to protect me.
Mm.
I don't necessarily care for Elizabeth, but she's there.
I call my pessimistic voice Nancy. She's my negative Nancy.
Oh,
And
okay.
every once in a while when she comes up and I get those thoughts and I'm like, okay, Nancy, you have to stop. So that's my way of kind of going, okay, it's not as bad as you think it is. We're gonna put Nancy in the corner and we're gonna deal with the problem.
Can Nancy, is she available for a play date with Elizabeth? Because
Oh,
maybe they
I
could get
think so.
together and then we could be free for a while.
That would work well.
Yes. But it does help, doesn't it, to name
It
them?
does. It does. It kind of stops it, It puts it in its place so that you can get on with other things rather than just keeping dwelling.
Yeah, yeah. I just learned really within like a month or so that sometimes the critic is trying to protect you. And
Hmm.
that was one of those moments. It was a class I was listening to, and I was like, my head blew off, like that little emoji, the mind blown. I was like, what? But I take notes on any type of class, again, the notebook's behind me. And I was like, what? And that's when I named her. Because I've always heard name the critic,
Yeah.
like Julia Cameron with The Artist Way, name the critic. And I was like, oh, no, I don't need to do that. And at that point, I was like, oh, Elizabeth.
I think we have time for one last question because we're running out of time, unfortunately.
Okay.
Um, so I have to ask, you have all these little, I don't know if they're bobbleheads or what these little
Oh, my little
characters
friend.
are behind you. I have to ask. Who are they?
Well, quite a few of them are Wonder Woman.
Oh,
They're little Funkos, so quite a few of them are Wonder Woman. There's a Barbie up there in the corner. Trying to see everyone. Yeah, that's a Wonder Woman. There's Wonder Woman there. That one up there is Bob Knight, the former basketball coach, because my everyone always would walk up to my dad and say, "Does anyone ever tell you like Bob Knight?" And oddly, well, my whole childhood, that's all we ever heard. He had his mannerisms, which is really strange because normally you have to study that. And certainly my dad wasn't studying that. My dad was never on YouTube. He's since passed, but he would never have done something like that. And so we would always hear that. So when they came out with Bob Knight bobbleheads, my husband for Christmas this year surprised me with two. So I'm always like, oh, there's dad. I actually have one of the little Funkos. There's a little Audrey Hepburn Funko, but I have a Jackie Kennedy Funko that looks just like my aunt that my husband got me. But she's on a different bookcase that's off. You can't see on camera. And I swear that is my aunt. I put her and Bob together, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid they'd move around the room and start talking to each other. But yeah, I love those. When I do like school visits and stuff, that's like the number one question I have is, can you like show the one over like your left shoulder? But there's actually more you can't see. Yeah, they're just all over. I get some as gifts and stuff like that. But yeah, I like the Barbie and the little hat, the Dana and the Barbie, because I had that Barbie way back in the day.
They're very cute.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And what we're going to do is we're going to put the links to your books in the description and a link to your website as well. So if people are interested in having a look, they can find you. And it was definitely a pleasure talking to you today.
Oh, I had fun. It was like a tea date.